So guys, apparently Conor McGregor wants to fight Dustin Porrier for charity, and everybody's talking about Israel Adesanya's boobies. It's a weird week in MMA news. We're breaking that and the preacher's daughter fight down right now. What's up, Barnhill family? Welcome back to the channel.
Yo.
Guys, just real quick before we get started, I know we normally say it at the end of the episode, but we are available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to check out the audio version of our show, if you're driving, we would really appreciate a download there. Thanks so much.
Texting and driving is not good. Watching YouTube videos and driving is even worse.
Yeah, audio, podcasts, and driving.
Yeah, that's the
ticket.
Yep.
So, Nick, it's been a bit of a strange week in the world of MMA news.
Yeah.
So we've heard Conor McGregor has basically made the round of call-outs now. We had Manny Pacquiao to Diego Sanchez, and now apparently he is fighting Dustin Poirier, or wants to fight Dustin Poirier for charity in Ireland on December 12th.
Yeah, and it's funny to me because it's two UFC fighters that have agreed to fight not in the UFC. And it appears, if you go to Twitter, you'll see George Masvidal said he's down to watch the fight. So there's UFC fighters that are down to watch this fight. Between UFC fighters, it doesn't happen in the UFC. And as far as they're saying, it's going to be a mixed martial arts exhibition match, not a boxing exhibition match, which I would have assumed that's probably because Dustin Poirier loves his boxing. Conor obviously loves his boxing as well.
Yeah, and I would have probably thought if they're going to do something for charity, something for fun, that it would have been more of a boxing match, because I don't really know, honestly, how you do a exhibition MMA match.
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to wear? Shin guards? Are they going to wear, like, those 8-ounce sparring gloves that, are like a hybrid boxing MMA glove?
They're also two of the top contenders in the world and both have had the belt at 155 and are still contending for that top spot. So you have to imagine they're going to go full bore. This isn't a Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. type of situation where they're both 50 years old. And these
are two guys in their prime that could, for all intents and purposes, compete in the UFC in what could be a title eliminator, saying that they're going to do it for charity. I don't know how this fight gets done. I mean, both of these guys are under exclusive contract with the UFC. There was a lot of hurdles that Conor had to jump to do the Floyd fight to begin with, but ultimately Dana went along with it because there was a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak.
Right.
But if this is a charity event, I'm not sure how they make this work. And then even further, I'd propose that, listen, if you guys want to fight and you want to donate some of your money to charity and you want to get other people to get behind it, I don't see why you couldn't do this event as a regular UFC fight at 155 and build some sort of charitable aspect to it, to where, the charities that you both care about benefit from this.
Right. And let's be frank. Everybody wants to see these two rematch. It's been a long time since they fought, but I think even they would both agree that they'd like to fight each other again at some point. Now kind of feels like the right time. But it's interesting because you never want to go at the UFC and you never want to go at Dana White, especially when you're trying to continue a working relationship with him. And over the past month, we've seen Conor kind of have a beef with him with these direct messages that got leaked, and they're kind of back and forth. He says he's retired, but then he's calling out people like Diego Sanchez, and it's weird. There's kind of like a little bit of animosity between him and Dana, but on the other end, Dana White's kind of saying that there's a little bit of animosity between him and Dustin Poirier as well, because Dustin wants more money. They had to cancel a fight that was supposed to be basically a number one contenders match between Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier, and was set up in case anything happened to the main event of Justin Gaethje and Khabib. So it's weird that you have two guys that are kind of in a little bit of a feud with the boss, agreeing to fight each other, but trying to do it without the boss's help or consent or anything like that. And I sense a lot of problems with that. And I honestly don't see it happening unless they get Dana White on board.
This doesn't get done without Dana White's blessing.
Right.
And then the other thing is that they talk about doing this at an open weight class. Well, and then Conor said in the same breath that it was going to be under the unified rules. Well, under the unified rules, can you fight? Can you have no weigh-in and still be within the rule set of the unified rules? I don't think so, because I know in boxing, when you fought, you and your opponent had to be within 6 pounds of each other at weigh-in. Otherwise, the fight was scratched. Right. So is that the same in the MMA unified rules? I really don't know, because they always weigh the same, or they're within a pound and a half, maybe 2 pounds at the most of each other.
Right.
So you don't run into those problems. But let's say, for example, Dustin and Conor are about the same size, but they could easily be 5 to 10 pounds apart.
Right.
So can you even operate under the unified rules with no weigh-in? So which I found very strange.
Yeah, and I would have to look up the rules behind that in Ireland, because I think that's where Conor wants to have this fight. It wouldn't surprise me if Conor knows the right people and knows how to line the right pockets to get a fight happening, no matter what the two weigh. And I'm sure it will be close come fight night, hypothetically, if it happens. But it's just bizarre to see people, and for all intents and purposes, if they did fight, people would look at it as a number 1 or number 2 contenders type of match. Even if it wasn't in the UFC, it would hold some weight in the rankings regarding the UFC.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those things where Conor, he voices his displeasure with the UFC. Mm-hmm. He goes out and does some things. He pulls the retirement card. He pulls the boxing card. And I guess those got a little tired, so now he's pulling the charity card. Right. That's his newest, trick. He's the newest rabbit out of his hat, so to speak.
Yeah. It works as far as headlines go. Nobody wants to dismiss a charity event, and nobody's going to down talk it. And it's kind of crazy when you have, in both situations that Conor McGregor has started in the past week, Manny Pacquiao versus Conor McGregor in a boxing match, doing it for charity in the Middle East. Everybody's on board, it seems. The fighters are on board. The managers are on board, which happen to be the same guy, so that's kind of easy. And now the people are on board. Everybody wants to see people in need get paid no matter what type of situation it might be. And now you've got Dustin Porrier agreeing, Conor McGregor agreeing. I'm sure their managers are agreeing, but it's just strange to me how they're trying to just make these headlines and having all the pieces of the puzzle put together besides Dana White's blessing.
Yeah, and Conor and Dustin are both charitable guys, even though Conor, has his outside of the ring antics, or outside of the octagon antics, I should say. He's involved in that Tunnels to Tower, which helps first responders and things like that. I forget the name of Dustin's charity, but I believe it's with regards to bullying and things like that, helping underprivileged kids in Louisiana, where he's from. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I think that if they want to involve charity into them fighting, that's a wonderful thing. I think it helps sell the fight. Mm-hmm. I think people would donate. I would throw a few extra dollars to benefit whichever charity they choose. So I think you can do this fight in the UFC at 155 with Dana's blessing. Dustin maybe gets that little contract bump that he wants because he's fighting Conor, and 2 or potentially more than 2 charities benefit from it.
Right.
You don't have to. This doesn't have to be like an either-or situation. It doesn't have to be a sideshow or just a regular fight. Do the fight, do it under UFC banner, and bring your charities in. Start a GoFundMe or something like that, or just create a link, on a swipe up to donate to this charity, and you might get your name goes into a raffle and you get assigned something by Dustin, or a FaceTime with Conor or something. Just I'm just throwing things out there,
right? But
something like that, you can bring charity into a UFC fight.
Yeah, and Dana White is kind of the gatekeeper for this situation. If these guys really care about the charities that they're wanting to donate to and put this event on for, then they will get Dana White on their side. He can make this happen. If he's not on board, this fight doesn't happen, which means the charities don't get paid unless they just decide to pull some money out of their bank accounts and shell it into whatever charity they want. But that's not really a publicity stunt, and it would look kind of cheesy if they just Instagrammed themselves doing that.
Right.
So they want to try to make a spectacle out of it, bring some shine to their name, stay active as fighters because that's what they love to do, but also, do it for a good cause. And if it just simply won't happen unless Dana White signs off on it. And as of right now, it kind of looks like they're both, kind of sticking their nose up to Dana White in the UFC and say, we're going to go do this over here. We don't need your help. and Dana's over there saying not so fast.
Yeah, which always does kind of rub me the wrong way. And I'm a very big Dustin Poirier fan.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a star. I think he does a lot of good outside of the cage, and I think he deserves a lot of money. But the reality of the situation is when you sign a contract with somebody, there's two parties to an agreement. Both parties have to put their signature on the final page to make it a solidified agreement. And in that agreement, you have all of the terms and conditions to which you agreed to. So, and I get there's big fights and there's big upside that come from potential fights and things like that. And Dana, and I'm going to sound like a huge Dana/company guy here, and I don't really mean it to come off that way, but when you sign an agreement to do a certain thing, and then later on you're still under the terms and conditions of that agreement and it doesn't suit you and you want to renegotiate and you're refusing to hold up your end of the bargain because you can't get more than what you agreed to, that always does kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth.
Right.
I think there's a way Dustin could go about doing this. You know, if he said, hey, look, I'm going to fight Conor. I want a little bit of the pay-per-view upside or just a little bump in pay. I think if it was something reasonable, Dana would do it. But that being said, he doesn't have to do it. No. You signed an agreement. Dana signed the same agreement. If the agreement was to pay you $500,000 per fight, you're not going to get $499,999. You're going to get $500,000 plus whatever else incentive, plus the Reebok, plus this, plus that.
Right.
So, you know, I find it disingenuous when somebody trashes Dana for holding up his end of the bargain,
right?
Yet at the same token, they're not willing to uphold theirs.
Yeah, and listen, you can make any sort of suggestions or you can make any sort of requests in your contract before it's signed. But once it's signed, that's what you agreed to. Yeah. So if you want to put in there, I want $100 million per minute that I last in the octagon with whoever I'm fighting. Of course, that's going to get, X'd out when Dana's lawyers look at it. But you can put that in there before the paper. But when they send back their, version of it and say, no, how about $500,000 every time you step in the octagon, and then this amount of incentive and this amount of this. And then it comes back to you, and you and your lawyer say, okay, well, this is what we should go with because this is what they're offering, and you agree to it. Then you need to be a man, and you need to honor that commitment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the flip side of that is you take a fighter like Dustin Poirier, and let's say that he, on his first 5 fights, they not his first 5, but since he became kind of a name, they offered him that $250,000, $500,000. I don't even know what it is, but let's just say it was $500,000.
More than almost everybody in the game.
And let's say that, he's one of the highest paid athletes in the game. Let's say that Dustin comes out and doesn't become the superstar that he became. Let's say he gets knocked out a bunch of times. Let's say he comes in, gets knocked out in the first round twice.
Yeah.
And Dana's under obligation to pay him for 3 more fights at that same rate. Dana's going to lose money because you didn't live up to expectation.
Right.
You went down as far as what your star did not rise. It fell a bit, yet you're still contractually okay because you're getting your negotiated price when your star was on the rise, even though it's on the downswing now. So I think that it's a bit, I don't like to see it. I get why these fighters have a very limited time in which they can perform and use their skills and make money. And I understand that. And I do think people like Dustin Poirier deserve a lot of money for getting in there and doing what he does. But at the same time, nobody held a gun to your head and made you sign that contract.
Right.
So you should honor it and go in there and put on. Dana White never doesn't reward a company person.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Cowboy Cerrone has become a multi-millionaire from the UFC. Khamzat Chimaev is literally on the fastest track to a title fight we've ever seen. If you're a company guy and you're willing to get in there, good things always happen to you. And I think that Dustin, I hope that Dustin can work something out and make this fight happen because this is the fight that they should make for Conor. Right. One of the few fights that makes sense for Conor and Dustin right now. Rope the charity into it, maybe get a little bump in pay because it's Conor and, Dana's willing to be a reasonable guy and negotiate. But, to ask for the moon after you already have a contract in hand, I don't know. I think it's the wrong move.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Dustin, they've both basically shown us that they do want this fight against each other. And I obviously know Dustin Porrier has always wanted to get that back, but it was a lot of people thought Conor got through that, but it was probably a tough night out, and Dustin's gotten a lot better. Probably doesn't want to get back in there. Now we know they both showed us their cards. They want to get this fight happening again. It should happen in the UFC, in the ranking system, the way it's supposed to happen, and they should do it with their agreed contracts. It's just a little strange to me. And what you said about Dana White rewarding people is so true. Hamza Chimaev's made right around $300,000 this year, just in 3 fights and fight incentives and stuff. But what Dana will do is, everybody knows, if you watch he does fight of the night bonuses for whoever the 2 guys that fought in the craziest fight was, and then performance bonuses 2. So that's 4 $50,000 bonuses that he gives out every time. If it's a great card and there's multiple people that deserve those titles, he shells out the checks left, right, and center. Everybody on the card.
Yeah.
Even though they say, oh, this is there's 4 opportunities to get $50,000, he could give every single fighter on the card $50,000 if they perform the way he likes it, and he has the authority to do that, and he has done stuff like that before. So, like you said, he's a very fair guy, but negotiating is kind of like synonymous with gambling. He's taking a chance on you, just like you're taking a chance on yourself.
Right.
And, when you have a 3-fight deal and you go, well, I think I could win these 3 fights no matter who I fight, I'm gonna bet on myself. Dana White's also betting on you to do something good. But if he loses his ass because you lose all those fights, then you can't expect for a nice payday.
One way that a little exercise I like to do to determine if something is fair or not is I just flip it on its head.
Yeah.
So imagine, let's say, for example, you're under contract with the UFC. They've offered you a 5-fight, $100,000 per fight payment. And you go out in the first fight, you miss weight, you get knocked out, you look really bad, get your $100,000. Come back the second time, you make weight this time, but you get submitted in the first round, or you get submitted in the second round. Nobody's talking about you anymore. You're not bringing $100,000 worth of revenue to the cards that you perform on.
Right.
And so now I'm Dana White, and I say to you, Nick, I agreed to that $100,000 for 5 fights, but boy, you really haven't looked good in your last couple of fights, so I'm going to cut you down to $25,000 now. Any fighter in the game would say, absolutely not. That is not fair. We're under agreement. And I would just say that if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, as our dad likes to say.
And they would threaten to sue, and they should.
Yep.
They would be right to do that. Remember, I guess it was probably by now a year and a half ago, possibly even 2, the bare knuckle boxing CEO, I don't know if it was the CEO, but whoever the guy is that runs that show, and they've kind of figured out some of their kinks, but at first it was an absolute mess.
Dumpster fire.
It was a dumpster fire, to say the least. And he came out in between rounds because he thought some guy was running, and he starts docking pay left, right, and center from his fighters to incentivize them to fight harder. And everybody in the UFC or in the mixed martial arts community goes, "Are you kidding me? You could never do this. This is illegal. He should be sued. He should." And now it's it's what you're saying. Flip that on the other side.
Yeah.
And imagine if if Dustin Poirier kicks Conor McGregor's ass in the first round and then grabs the microphone from Bruce Buffer and goes, "I'm not fighting in the second round unless you pay me double the amount of money that because I'm kicking his ass already." It's like, no, this is not how this works, and it looks bad on both ends. And if Dana's going to hold up his end of the bargain, then you should too.
Agreed. And talking about a guy who is got a lot of money coming his way these days, Israel Adesanya.
Yeah.
He's back in the headlines again. People are saying that he's on steroids because his chest looked a little funny and
it looked a little lopsided.
Yeah, he said, "Listen, why is everybody talking about my titties?" To Ariel, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
He always, in my opinion, reacts to things very well.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going on? I mean, it just probably could be as something as simple as like he needs to go to the doctor and get checked out. I'm not ready to accuse Israel Adesanya of using steroids.
Yeah, and if you go to the internet, you'll see that a lot of people are already accusing him, and I've done a little bit of research on it just to try to figure it out because I don't know that much about side effects from performance enhancing drugs, but gynecomastia is what they're claiming he has, which is also known on the streets as
Yeah.
And they generally come in a set. You generally get titties plural. Yeah. You don't get a single one. And it could be an infection. It could be. He said he had no idea what it was. He didn't get it checked by a doctor, which is a little bit alarming. I would have probably gone to a doctor just to get an opinion, even if I was to kind of keep it under wraps, because if it is something horrible, I don't even know what it could be. But the doctor says it's so bad that you need to do this, you need surgery, you get out of the fight. I get a lot of fighters are always hiding injuries and things like that, so I understand why he would hide it from a doctor and not go see it until post-fight. But it is a little bit weird that happened, and now you've got everybody. John Jones, who knows a little bit about performance-enhancing drugs.
The Pico man himself.
Yeah, he's probably experienced this in his day before, but he's accusing him. All the fighters are accusing him. Paulo Costa is accusing him. The keyboard warriors, they're all accusing him, saying that no doubt that's steroids. And I have no idea. I think it could be something more. It could be less. It could just be a random thing that happens.
It could be. He looked very trim for this fight.
Yeah.
Izzy's kind of a guy I'm not going to call him skinny fat, but he's skinny with a little fluff, and so this past, his six pack didn't always show his shoulder muscles and all. This past fight, he looked very trim, more so than normal.
Yeah. And
he, like you said, he cut weight playing ping pong, and he weighed in at 184 pounds, 1 pound less than he needed to weigh. So I'm not even sure how much weight he cut to begin with. This could be just we're seeing his body shape a little differently now. He's also maturing and aging as he goes. He's still a young guy in his early 30s now. So before we just start pointing the finger at Izzy and accusing him of using steroids, I think we should all consider the fact that Israel Adesanya is one of the biggest superstars in the UFC. Therefore, I'm sure that he is tested by USADA more than almost any fighter.
Absolutely.
So if he's getting past USADA's testing somehow, then I don't know how that may be. But I think this might be more of a bit of a medical condition for Izzy than it is something sinister.
Yeah, and I can't wait to find out what it is. I hope they get a good doctor or a couple of opinions from doctors, and that we can understand what this is. So next time we see a situation like this, where a male fighter has a rack like they belong in the female bantamweight division, we understand that this could be something other than performance enhancing drugs. And if one lopsided breast on Izzy Adesanya is enough to say he's clearly on steroids just from the eye test, then it's hard to say that Paulo Costa doesn't fail the eye test.
There's a lot of people in the UFC that failed the eye test.
And Paulo
flying
Costa
colors way, way worse than Israel Adesanya does.
Right, including his last opponent. So if they were both on steroids, if they both were on steroids, it doesn't really matter. We saw the same outcome. I think if they fought 10 times, the exact same thing would happen all 10 times.
That was that was not a power thing. That was not
and USADA also has had, with the quarantine and everything like that, even a major corporation like this has had trouble testing foreign fighters as much as domestic fighters. But they were able to get to Brazil. They were able to get to New Zealand, Australia, test all the people around the world. They're still getting it done. It's just a little bit more difficult. So you're seeing American fighters that live out here get tested more frequently, but that doesn't mean that Izzy didn't get tested this fight.
And so, enough about Izzy's boobies. I can't even believe that was like in the headlines this week. But so talking about his next opponent.
Yeah.
It looks like a lot of people on that light heavyweight, in the light heavyweight rankings have dance partners or have already, like Romero has already been beaten by Izzy.
Middleweight.
Sorry. Middleweight. Yeah, I'm thinking about. I'm getting ahead of myself because
you're thinking about where Yoel Romero should go,
moving up to light heavyweight. Yeah, so in the middleweight division. So who do you think would be a reasonable opponent for Izzy to face next?
Well, Chael Sonnen and we listen to Chael all the time. We're big fans. He pointed out that a lot of the guys at the top of the heap have dance partners right now, and the ones that don't, he's already beat them. You know, Izzy's only 9-0 in the UFC.
Yes, 9-0.
9-0, but some of those are title fights and fights where he's defending his belt, title defenses. So he had a very difficult schedule when he started in the UFC because they knew what he was potentially going to become. Turns out he was that and more. But he's kind of gone through all of the toughest opponents already.
Yeah.
And the ones that, are still available, they're lined up with other people right now, people who he's probably fought, or even if he didn't, they're already lined up. They have dates and stuff like that. They have to focus on the task at hand. So it leaves you with a short list of guys, and not all of them have a Leon Edwards type of a record or an Izzy Adesanya type of record. Some of them have one win and 2 losses before that, or like a Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
He did get back in the win column, but before that he was in struggle city. You've got Uriah Hall, who's kind of hit a skid. He's win 1, lose 1, win 2, lose 2 type of thing, but he's about to fight Anderson Silva.
Right.
If he can finish Anderson Silva, maybe make a claim that, hey, I finished Anderson Silva, you only took him to decision. And that's kind of the same thing as Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman goes, look, I beat Anderson Silva. I finished him twice. You didn't finish him, even the one time you fought him. And arguably I finished him in his prime and you finished him as a 40-plus-year-old man. Right. So there's an argument for Chris Weidman. There's an argument for Uriah Hall if he can get past Anderson Silva. But one person that I think should maybe try to insert themselves into the division, because everybody knows a fresh coat of paint means there's a whole new parity. Anything can happen. And it appears that whoever fights Izzy next is only one fight away from getting that shot. So somebody that I would like to see him fight stylistically, I think it matches up well, is Wonderboy Thompson.
Yeah.
Much like the 185 division, the 170 division is pretty log jammed right now, and everybody's kind of got a dance partner. And there's been talks that Wonderboy's either going to fight Khamzat Chimaev next or Leon Edwards, but those are still up in the air. And I have a feeling it's probably not going to be Khamzat Chimaev. I just think there's going to be another option for him. But if I was Wonderboy and I was looking to stay active, I might try to go pull a fight with Jack Hermanson or one of the other guys. Kelvin Gastelum?
Yeah. So I think Wonderboy, I do think there's going to be a tough argument to say that a guy who's not even, the number one contender at 170 should go get a title fight at 185. But I will say if he goes up there, like you said, fresh coat of paint, whole new storyline, beats somebody, then yeah, he's right in the mix. Right. And he's in the mix largely because everybody loves Wonderboy Thompson. He's a big name, and stylistically, he presents a great matchup for Izzy. I still personally think Izzy can beat Wonderboy Thompson. I would pick, if they make that fight, my money is on Izzy, and I think he'd be a pretty sizable favorite. But that being said, I would love to see that fight just to see how they engage each other, because one thing we can guarantee on, you can bet the house on, is that fight's not going to the ground.
Right.
That fight is, unless somebody hits the ground.
Right. And the thing about it is most people go, oh, okay, well, Izzy Adesanya is a great striker, could work on his grappling, which he's been doing, but a really great wrestler or somebody who's really good at grappling is going to be his toughest test. Well, let's see. Yoel Romero couldn't take him to the ground and keep him there. Paulo Costa is apparently a black belt, but couldn't even, get anything going on him. He's fought all these guys that are very good wrestlers, and they've had no success.
Anderson Silva is a black belt. I know that's, that wasn't where that fight was going to take place, but he's a black belt, Brazilian true jiu-jitsu and judo black belt.
Right, with great submissions under his belt. Robert Whitaker is an explosive guy that will push up against. I have a feeling that Izzy has all the ingredients to stop pressure fighters and wrestling type grapplers. Maybe the person that beats him isn't a heavy grappler, because that's the kind of the lazy argument. Great striker, put a great grappler against him, he's going to have a tough night out. Maybe a great striker needs to fight another great striker, and that's where Wonderboy comes in perfectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think Khabib has shown us that, take a great striker and put a dominant grappler against him and they get dominated. So that's kind of where that argument continues to stem from. And I do think Khamzat Chimaev is a real threat to any great striker. Yeah. No doubt about that. But yeah, just a high-level stylistic striking match between Wonderboy Thompson and Israel Adesanya. I would personally love to see it. I know some people are going to say, oh, that's far-fetched. Wonderboy doesn't deserve that yet. And maybe they're right, but I think if we get to see that fight at some point, even though I think I know what the outcome would be, I still am intrigued to see that. That's one of those few fights that I think I know Izzy wins.
Yeah.
But I just want to see what Wonder Boy does in there with him.
Right.
You know?
Right. I mean, that's literally the highest level of striking that the UFC has to offer, in my opinion. And if I were to present a question, who would you... Okay, so he said... Israel Adesanya said that Jared Cannonier is next if he finishes Robert Whittaker.
Right.
He's going into this fight. If you go look at the odds, he's the underdog.
Right.
Would you rather watch Robert Whittaker fight Israel Adesanya again, or would you rather watch him fight Wonderboy Thompson?
Oh, 100% Wonderboy Thompson.
You know, because we see what happens with that. So we know who Robert Whittaker, or we know how Israel Adesanya deals with Robert Whittaker. I don't really think that he deserves a rematch right now. I think he might need a couple of wins, and that's a former champ. We just know he's got Robert Whittaker's number, and we know that. I think it's time that we bring in some new faces for him, and he, like I said, it's not his fault he cleaned out the division in 9 fights, and all 9 of those guys are pretty much in the top 10, top 15 right now. So
if we're talking about a rematch for Izzy, just as far as my personal level of interest, nothing to do with the rankings, because I know he's not the number 1 contender anymore, would be Kelvin Gastelum.
Yeah.
That was the only close fight that Izzy's had.
Right.
You know, in recent memory. So, you know, he starches Costa, starches Whittaker. God, I don't even know what to call the Romero fight. What happened there, just bizarre. But so I don't think that he's deserving of a rematch.
No.
And he's aging by the day. He's in his 40s, and even somebody like him, time is going to take its toll. If we're talking about a rematch, hands down, my money and what I would like to see would be the Gastelum rematch.
Yeah, and the short list is, I think Gastelum definitely belongs there. It's crazy, but you know, some of the best contenders at 185 used to be 170ers and have the frame, like Kelvin Gastelum. Darren Till, I believe, will fight Israel Adesanya within the next calendar year. You know, I would assume it's probably for the
12
title.
to 18 months, I'd say.
Yeah, because if he can win, he was very similar to the Wonderboy Thompson thing. He won his first fight at middleweight, and then they said, look, if you can get past one more fighter, then you're going to get the title shot.
You're the guy,
Yeah. So it's one of those things where you don't really have to be on a Leon Edwards type of streak to get the title shot at 185, because it seems like everybody's kind of beating everybody, but losing at the same time. And then Israel Adesanya has already wiped them all out in terrific fashion. So there's not much to be seen in a rematch.
Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe even, like you said, Chris Weidman, he's got to win one more. Because Izzy said, I want the names. Yeah. I want the names. That's why he had tremendous respect for Anderson Silva. So you got to believe that he has tremendous respect for the guy that twice beat Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
So even though Chris Weidman has had a tough go the last couple of years, if he can win one more fight, people are going to be talking about putting him in there with Izzy. But I think this could get to a situation very quickly, and by very quickly, I mean like the end of next year, to where we're searching for opponents for Izzy.
Yeah.
And unless Khamzat Chimaev continues to win in dominant fashion and he gets thrust into that position, if he suffers a setback and then Izzy keeps winning, I don't know who more we're going to throw him in there with.
Yeah, we might have to bump him up to light heavyweight. I think that's the natural progression of where we see him going. But as of right now, I like him at 185. I think he belongs there. Physically, he will grow a little bit and fit into the light heavyweight division better. But as of right now, I would keep doing that thing. I would try to break Anderson Silva's record of consecutive wins at 185. One thing he has the unique chance to do, and people talk about it all the time, is George St. Pierre beat the people of his day, the people of before him in the future.
Right.
Khabib, for example, can't do that. You know, like BJ Penn is not in the league, you know, or maybe he is, but whatever. He's not fighting Khabib anytime soon. Khabib doesn't have the opportunity to beat champions of old and then, you know, potentially new champions. Izzy does. Izzy, if he Anderson Silva.
He beat Silva.
If he goes with Weidman, that's a champ. I personally think the Rockhold fight is one that could happen.
Yeah.
If Rockhold can get a win, he deserves a title fight. That's another champion on his list. And then the future would be the Khamzat Chimaev, because the writing on the wall,
if he can get back on track and stuff like that.
Right. The Shabazian and the Chimaev, those are kind of the guys of the future of the division. So if he could be the guy, the next guy. And it's not that other champions can't do it. It's just so rare that a division has those former champions in the top contender spots still. 135, Peter Yan kind of has the chance to do it. TJ Dillashaw's coming back. Dominic Cruz is still in there. Henry Cejudo's. I don't think he's retired.
Who knows what Henry Cejudo's doing?
But it's cool because not a lot of people have the opportunity to make that type of a
No,
run.
that's a good point. Yeah, and like you said, he's already got Silva, and then if he could get Weidman and Rockhold, he's interested in the names and he wants the names.
Adds to the legacy.
Yeah, I think so. And so talking about the other half of that past main event, Paulo Costa. I personally have been thinking about this, and I think that there's no other option for Paulo but to move up to light heavyweight for two reasons. He got dominated. Yeah, he looked like an amateur against Izzy. Right. He's not getting that rematch anytime soon. As mad as he is at Izzy for the post-fight antics or whatever, and when you're fighting somebody and you just get a knockout win, there's a split second where you're just rushed with adrenaline and endorphins, and maybe you do something that you shouldn't do. So I'm not ready to hang Izzy out to dry for that. Right. Maybe it was a little disrespectful, but that being said, don't get knocked out, and that doesn't happen to you. So I don't think they're putting Paulo Costa in there with Izzy anytime soon.
No.
As much as he demands it. Reason number one. Reason number two is Paulo Costa is just about bigger than every light heavyweight in the division.
Right.
He's got the height. He probably weighs 240. What'd you say, 230, 240 in the offseason. So that's about what John Jones was weighing, or maybe even a little more, cutting down.
Yeah.
I think that he's losing a tremendous amount of quickness and power by cutting that much weight. And I don't really know what he's afraid of, because I do think his power would translate at light heavyweight. I do think he would be crisper and more energized at light heavyweight. And he's also a good grappler. Yeah. He's training with Cejudo's camp, so his wrestling is coming along. He's already a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I can't think of any reason why Costa doesn't move up to light heavyweight. Am I wrong there?
No, I think that's a great move for him. And, I think... he would present some problems to a Jan Blachowicz and a Dominic Reyes. They're both coming off losses. I would love to see those two.
Reyes and Costa. Yeah.
Reyes and Costa would be a fantastic fight. You got one of the most athletic guys versus one of the most athletic guys in two different divisions, and you just throw them in there together. I think that's a smart move. I think Costa, I don't care who you are, if you live at 230, cutting to 185 is a nightmare. Now, it's even harder if you have no fat on your bones, which at 230, he's still got a six-pack after dinner. So
this is not big country Nelson here.
Right, who could go on keto and strip 60 pounds in 6 weeks.
And fight TJ Dillashaw in probably 12 weeks.
Yeah, Roy Nelson, for all intents and purposes, could have been a middleweight. Yeah, is a flyweight. But no, I think that's a great move for him. And, light heavyweight has been so uninteresting for a while because there was just nothing happening. Everybody knows who the champ is. Nobody's going to touch him. And then when it wasn't John Jones, it was Daniel Cormier. Everybody knows he's the champ. Nobody's going to touch him. Now it appears that there's going to be some new motions happening in that division, and there's some new names that are kind of emerging, Dominic Reyes being one of them. I think if you throw Costa in there, that just adds to the depth of the light heavyweight division, which they've so needed for a while.
Yeah, and I think that the Israel Adesanya, Anderson Silva body shape, even Robert Whittaker, is he's a little bit more muscular but still trim, is the right size for 185. I think Paulo Costa is way too big for 185. He's a light heavyweight through and through.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to see him up there. And I'd like you said, I love the Reyes fight. Let's take the main event and the co-main event. The two losers, put them together.
Yeah.
Why not?
And just do it at the bigger weight division.
Yeah.
And I could see him progressing to heavyweight.
He's a huge guy.
He weighs the same as Stipe Miocic.
Yeah. That's a good point, because Stipe comes in at 240, 230. I think 233 was his lowest. Yeah. And, if Paulo, and then that's with no weight cut, I would venture to say that if Paulo Costa fought Stipe Miocic, one, that Stipe would win that fight.
For sure.
but two, that more importantly to my point here, that Paulo would be the heavier of the two.
Yeah.
So think about that for a second, and think about the fact that one, Paulo would be heavier, and two, that Stipe, even though he's a trim guy, does have a higher percentage body fat than Paulo. So imagine Stipe cutting to 185.
Yeah.
And then imagine a guy that's even bigger and even less body fat doing the same thing. That's what Paulo Costa was doing. Yeah. I think it was the wrong move.
It's a nightmare. Look at the success that Anthony Rumble Johnson had. He used to fight at welterweight.
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing that great. And then he goes up all the way to 205, surpasses the 185 division, goes all the way up. And then he finds his home. You know, he didn't ever quite get the belt, but his
more interesting fights happened at heavier weights than lighter weights.
And more success, and he still is only one fight away from a title shot. Okay, how about this? We haven't seen him in a while. How about Paulo Costa introduces him back into the UFC? He introduces...
Sign me up.
Paulo Costa
Rumble
back
Johnson,
to the light heavyweight.
Paulo Costa. Good Lord.
That would be insane.
Guys, I think we just broke a fight here.
Yeah, I think we need to see that happen. Yeah. If you know Anthony Rumble Johnson, you know Paulo Costa.
Put them together.
Let's
the fight
see that.
there.
Good
Lord, that's the fight.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be incredible. But yeah, I think Costa needs to bump it up. So yeah, moving into this weekend's fight, we got the Preacher's Daughter. What I always say is the most decorated 500 fighter in the UFC's history.
Yeah.
Maybe next to Mark Hunt.
Yeah, most accomplished. Jesus.
Yeah, she's fighting a girl by the name of Irene Aldana.
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with Irene, if I'm being totally honest. I know she beat Betch Correia. She's from Mexico. She fought for a title in Jungle Fight's promotion down in Brazil, did not win it. I believe she had a decision loss to Raquel Pennington. Suffice it to say, not the who's who list that Holly Holm has fought.
Right.
Holly is 38 years old. She's winding down her career here. What do you think about this main event? Obviously, it's kind of I don't want to say a letdown because I love Holly, but after the fight weekend we just got last week to now, it's like, okay, I guess they're just kind of giving us a chance to breathe before the end of October.
Right.
Gaethje Khabib.
They lightened the load a little bit for this one. That's okay. I think that Holly Holm is fantastic. Skill-wise, she is still one of the top 5 females on the planet.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Especially in her weight class. She's done some things that most girls just dream about doing in this division or in the UFC in general. And she has kind of earned the title of gatekeeper. Yeah. You know, gatekeeper gets tied in with veterans, and they usually say, well, if you can beat them, then you can kind of move on into the top 3 or title contention and stuff like that. Holly Holm is a tough night out for all these girls.
What a gatekeeper.
Yeah, exactly. And
that gate's pretty secure. Yeah, if you can get through it, then you deserve the champ.
Right. The Preacher's Daughter, she doesn't play around. And I think that I don't know if I see her getting another title fight, but she's for sure going to be putting in her next few fights until the end of her career, she's going to be putting future champions on her resume. There's going to be a lot of girls that have to get past Holly Holm, and if they can, then they're most likely 1 or 2 fights away from fighting for the title.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with Holly Holm, we're talking about a girl here that went the distance with Chris Cyborg.
Right.
Incredible chin, incredible striking IQ, just a really good all-around mixed martial artist.
Finished Ronda Rousey when everybody thought nobody could finish Ronda Rousey.
Head kick knockout of Ronda Rousey.
Kind of like put her in the Matrix. She also kind of looked like Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz in that it was so much of an advantage, and she was making her miss and making her slip, and Ronda was falling all over the place. It kind of reminded me of that.
It was like something was in the air that night. Same with Cody and Dominic. It was like you could just feel it. And if they put that fight again now, Cody and Dominic, maybe it would go different. If they put, well, I don't think they would go different with Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm.
That one would go the same.
Ronda, unfortunately, as much as she did for the sport, the talent level passed her by.
Yeah, this sport progresses at a crazy rate.
It really does. But yeah, I mean, Holly Holm, she what an amazing career she's had. I mean, to knock out basically the woman who brought women's MMA to the forefront and be the first person to defeat her, what a feat.
Hang with the scariest girl the sport's ever seen.
Go the distance with Chris Cyborg and lose a decision. You know, I think Holly Holm gets the job done here for a couple reasons. One, it's a main event. If Chris Cyborg can't knock you out, then Irene is certainly not knocking you out.
Right.
Holly's got the fight IQ and the 5-round experience to take Irene into deeper waters and drown her, I think. And I think her overall MMA game is just better.
Yeah, and I want to see the Holly Holm of old come out in this fight. A few of her last fights have been a little bit boring. She'll push you up against the cage and kind of beat you up with like a aggressive Muay Thai clinch up against the cage, do just enough to not get separated. But it's not really a fan favorite style, and her old style definitely was, sending head kicks and knocking people out left, right, and center. I would like to see her kind of go back to that, maybe risk it a little bit more. And I think Irene is a perfect opponent for her to kind of get that step back in her motion. And
back in her step.
Yeah. She's obviously one of the most talented females on the roster. She's still getting great training, and I think that she's. Even though she's an older female fighter, she's still athletically a young body. So.
Yeah, she does take extremely good care of herself.
For sure.
And she always comes in there very well conditioned and ready to fight.
I might be a little bit bold on this prediction, but if we're giving predictions, we're only going to do the main card because the rest of the card, main event because the rest of the card is a little bit tough. But and I also hate making bad predictions. And if I don't know who the fighters are that well, I just feel like it ruins my record.
Yeah,
we're going to start keeping track of the records.
Yeah, we're going to get betting with the Barnhills guys because we were pretty accurate on a lot of these. But
and then if you bet with us, you'll probably make some money.
Yeah, I'm not tarnishing my record by predicting a fight in which I don't know one of the fighters enough to make a serious, proper prediction.
Right. That being said, I think we're going to see the Holly of old come out, and I think we're going to see her get a finish. I think we're going to see some sort of a cool kick.
Okay.
TKO finish, round number 3.
Okay. I'm with you on the home win. I think she drags her into deep waters.
Yeah.
And if it does happen, the finish, it would be 4 or 5. But I'm going decision 49-46, maybe 50-45. Holly
unanimous.
Holm. Clear unanimous decision.
I like that.
Guys, I think that's it for today. Check us out where you listen to podcasts, please. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Nick and I are going on the road. We got a little family road trip. So the next time you see us, we're taking the mics with us and everything. So we're going to be in a little bit different of a setting. So stay tuned for that.
Y'all have a great day. Peace.
Have a good one, guys.